That is much better than you.
You're the one who imitates Pat. I've never even tried to.
I'm not even close to that. Can I hear another one?
You left the pressure on me. No.
We'll get a promo afterwards. He'll do Patterson.
I always want to know about your lives growing up and your parents. Can you both share about your parents and life growing up before wrestling?
For me, there was no life before wrestling, because my dad was not only a professional wrestler, he had been a national amateur champion. In 1946, while he was still in the Navy,
right.
he won the AAU National Heavyweight Wrestling title.
Right.
And then post Navy, he went to Nebraska and lettered 8 times, 4 years in football, 4 in wrestling. 3 years in a row, he was conference heavyweight champion for the University of Nebraska. And Mike came into my life when I was 5. He wasn't my biological dad. He married my mother when I was 5, and my mother's given name was Gladys Nevins, but her wrestling name was Helen Hild. My mother was also a professional lady wrestler,
right,
and a pretty dang good one.
Right.
And that's how they met, and they got married when I was in October of '59, when I was 5 years old. He came into my life, and the rest is history. I mean, that's like, the territorial days of wrestling, and he was a top performer everywhere he went. And again, had a tremendous relationship with Dory Funk Sr. I remember going to the first grade in Amarillo. I came back there, and I was in the 6th grade in Amarillo, and we came back again after my freshman year of high school. Left Nebraska and was going to finish high school in Texas, and my father died that summer working for Dory. And I went back and finished high school in Arizona, and then I had signed a scholarship to play ball at Arizona, University of Arizona. Wrestling comes on TV one day. I hadn't seen any wrestling for 3 years since my father's death, and it's the tape from Amarillo. So they're coming into Arizona to run some shows. So I go to Tucson and visit the Funks, and Terry says, "Hey," he says, "I can get you a recruiting trip to visit West Texas." He says, "Even if you've decided what to do," he says, "just come back and see everybody." And I said, that'll be great. And so I went. That's all it took. I got back around it. I got back in that atmosphere just for those couple of days. But I was smart enough to know that coming out of a very small school in southern Arizona, that West Texas State is probably a better choice for me than Arizona. But in the back of my mind was always wrestling. It's like, I'm going to get back around this, and it was always in my head. And so biggest mistake in my life, I go 3 years college, play football for 3 years, get out of school. And at the end of my sophomore year, during the summer, I refereed in the territory. And I couldn't wrestle, but I could be a referee. You can learn a whole lot about the business being the third man in the ring. And then at the end of the next summer, at the end of my junior year, Dick Murdoch says to me, he says, "I'm going down to Mid-South to wrestle for Bill Watts." He said, "If you want to get your feet wet, I think I can get you booked." And so Bill got me. Bill went ahead and let me come in there, and I was going to wrestle for the summer and go back and finish school, and I never went back. Things went very well, very fast, and that's still the biggest mistake of my life. I was 1 year away from a degree in education, and
it's not too late, Ted.
You're right.
Just got 1 year.
I could still do it.
One more year.
That's too funny.
I could still do it.
I don't know if that's a mistake, though, man. Considering what happened,
it worked out.
Oh, rats! I turned out to be the $1 million man. Darn it! Mike, how about you growing up before wrestling?
I grew up in upstate New York, basically on 180 acres of land.
Nice.
We had beef, cattle. My dad worked construction. My mom worked at IBM for like 50 years.
Wow. Okay.
I have one sister, which she still lives up that way near my mom. Basically, my dad was a good athlete and taught me pretty much everything I knew about sports, whether it was football. He played basketball and was a real good baseball player, so I did all those sports, but he got me geared towards wrestling because I was a big husky kid and thought I would do better at that than basketball. And then basically I kept, working and ended up Tom Coughlin, the coach of the Giants,
Sure.
was my recruiter to go to Syracuse University.
Wow. Nice.
And used to show up in the summer. Some summers I'd stay home and some I'd stay in Syracuse, but I had a weight room there and I'd work a job at a cable factory and then come back and I'm working out and Coughlin would show up and say, okay, you're going down to the track with me. And I'm like, okay. After 10 hours of working and whatever, we go to the track and he has me running 220s and 440s and 40s and whatever, so.
Is he the drill sergeant he appears to be? And I mean that in a good way. He's a legend here in New York.
He's a fair guy, though.
Fair.
Awesome. He's a fair guy. I remember a guidance counselor of mine sent him a letter because I transferred to a little bigger high school my senior year because to get a better look at getting a scholarship. So I remember we wrestled Ithaca, New York, Ithaca High School. I went to high school in Owego, New York, my senior year, which was a little bigger than the high school I came from, but not really that big. So it came down to, which it does a lot in wrestling, the heavyweight match. If this team heavyweight wins, this team wins, or that the other way, So I came down to one of those deals, and we used to get a good following. Our gymnasium was full there. We had a good wrestling team. So I pinned the kid pretty quick, and I'm coming off the mat, and Coughlin comes up to me like a kid in a candy shop. He was happier than I was.
There you go.
But he liked that, and that's the kind of person he was. So
he's a great leader.
So
obviously.
anyways, I ended up going to Syracuse and on a football scholarship. I wasn't going to wrestle, and I told Ted this story the other day when we were in the car yesterday. One of the guys that recruited me to try at the state tournament to go to Syracuse Wrestlers, John Janiak, kept coming. I'd see him on the campus because he knew me from the state tournament. He says, come work out. Come work out with our heavyweight. Just roll around with him. You need somebody to work out with. So I finally went down to a wrestling practice, and I went there 2 or 3 days, and I told Janiak, I said, I think I can beat this guy. And he was a fifth-year senior football player, and I was a freshman, so he goes, challenge him to a wrestle-off, and I pinned him, and he quit. So because he was done. Well, he quit because he was done, He finished football, and he could relax the rest of his college days and not worry about it. So they go, you want to go to Florida? And we go down there on Christmas break and wrestle, and I said, hell yeah, let's go. So that's how I ended up, and after that, I got so close with the guys, and on the wrestling team, I ended up doing both sports until my last year. I finished football, and I sat out in wrestling, and 5 of us did that, and we came back the next year for a 5th year, and we won the Eastern Championships, and the only team we lost to that year nationally was Iowa. We beat Oklahoma State, or whatever. We beat Lehigh.
Wow.
We had a really good team. So
And I really admire that because it's like Mike and I agreed on this. I mean, in today's, once it's very unusual to see an athlete who's doing 2 sports.
Yeah.
You're gonna, because you're gonna pick a sport, and you're gonna be on scholarship to play football, or you're gonna be on scholarship to wrestle,
right?
And because the wrestling coach is gonna go, hey, you're gonna play football. I don't want to, I want to see you get hurt, so you can't wrestle for me, and vice versa.
Right.
So you just don't see that very much.
plus you have to be a glutton for punishment.
Right.
Because you never get a break.
Right.
It was year-round.
But it's funny. You could see that your careers were heading towards something that was going to be super positive. I mean,
But I didn't know anything about wrestling.
I'm just saying in general, right? You guys are world-class athletes, and I mean that, right? College football players, college
He's
wrestlers.
pinning seniors.
Yeah,
as a
it's like,
freshman,
that's a big
and then they're
deal.
quitting.
But
There's a clue.
But the thing of it is I had no conception about ever getting in this business because where I grew up in outside of Binghamton is where Owego is. Like WWF at the time was WWF, right?
Yeah.
So that would come on at like 12:30, 1 o'clock.
Sure.
WOR, midnight.
Sure.
In the Friday night or whatever.
Yeah. Late night.
I didn't even know it existed. I swear to God.
So that's a good
And
point.
never had been to a pro match live until I was 23 years old and went with Dick Beyer. So it was like this. But I could tell the first time I ever went, Dick took me to Canada with him because he was working Montreal territory up there and Andre the Giant, Frank Valois, Gino Brito, and Dino Bravo owned the Montreal territory, and it was like a summer territory. And Dick was going up there. We'd go up there a week, and that's where I first met Andre. Killer Khan,
Killer Khan.
Killer Khan. I
Swede
love
Hansen
Killer
put
Khan.
me out with a sleeper in a bar because I was asking Dick. I said, "Does that really work?" So
Nighty night, Bunny
Swede
Rabbit.
goes, "Come over here."
Right.
Next thing you know, they're whacking me in the back, and I'm like,
Mike and I have talked about this too. Some. I didn't realize when I first started, the incredible amount of talent that I was being exposed to when I first started. You named a lot of guys there
Yeah.
that could really
Yeah.
go.
Right.
And when you get in a ring with those guys, you got a lot better chance of picking it up than than being with somebody that knows less.
You had the fast track to learning.
Yeah. And so when I went to work for Vince was, Dick Murdoch, Killer Carl Cox, oh my gosh, so many different guys came through there that were just they weren't good wrestlers, they were great wrestlers.
Right.
And I didn't know what I was at the time, but now I appreciate it. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that completely because I went to Germany to start. Then I was going back and forth, and I did maybe 2 shows, a couple shows a week, driving up to Canada. And I worked, I think Dick got me booked at a show in Toronto Maple Leafs Gardens. So I worked a show. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Johnny Weaver and said, "Hey, kid," because I worked with Jesse Ventura, and he beat me in like a minute at the Cadillac tournament.
Wow.
And Jesse says to me before, "This is Governor.